Good morning, brothers and sisters. I'm Theresa Watson from Priest for Life. I'm the executive manager, and usually Father Frank is doing interviews, and today we're going to change it up a little bit. I'm actually going to interview him. So thank you for joining us, and good morning, Father Frank.
Well, hello, Theresa.
Hi.
Good to be with you.
Thank you.
Usually people see you doing the readings at the Mass.
Yes.
Certain days anyway,
Certain
when you're
days,
able to be
yes.
here.
Yes, I am blessed to do that. So, Father Frank, many people see you in this public role, but
Right.
give us a little insight into your personal life. Were
My
you
personal
always
life.
interested in the church?
In the church. Well, you know, I went to public schools growing up. I would not say we were deeply involved in the church, but we did go to Mass as a family. But aside from that, no, nothing. I mean, we'd go to Mass, and I was more into my studies. But I did have a saint as a pastor, though, I have to say. I grew up in Portchester, New York, the parish of Corpus Christi, a Salesian parish. Among the Salesians, there is one of the successors of St. John Bosco as head of the community was beatified, Blessed Philip Rinaldi. And his nephew, Father Peter Rinaldi, was my pastor all during my years growing up. And everyone who knew him, and in fact, if you ask now the people from Portchester, they'll tell you, the man was a saint. And so when I was in high school, in my last year of high school, that's when I began paying more attention to the church, praying more, reading scripture, going to Mass every day. And Father Rinaldi then became my first spiritual director. And then I went to him with my desire that I got just at that time to start going towards the priesthood. So in a nutshell, that's what happened.
Awesome. So I understand you were very interested in your studies in school. So tell us about that.
Well, you know, I was very intensely interested in my studies. Now, of course, I had friends. I have a brother 2 years younger than I am. And we would get together with our friends. We lived 10 minutes from Playland Amusement Park. We'd love to go there on the rides. There was rowboating there. I was a Boy Scout, and we went to camping trips. And, so I was involved in all those kinds of normal activities, but it was not unusual at all to find me in the public library, or, as my mom will tell you, in our living room, I would have my books and papers sprawled out all over the floor, studying for hours and hours on end. I was not one of those people who, I couldn't wait to, finish my homework and go out and do other things. No, I was very much the opposite. I couldn't wait to get to my homework and to spend extra hours studying. So I was always inclined that way. And one of the interesting things, subjects I liked to study, but I remember taking these long yellow notepads. Mm-hmm. I would fill them with handwritten notes on psychology. I would devour all these books on psychology. And I ended up graduating a year early. There was a group of students in my high school class who got permission to finish up a year early because we were all of us were kind of the same way. We were into our studies. They let us move ahead at our own pace. And so I graduated high school in 3 rather than 4 years and ended up valedictorian of my class, which was kind of fun because I was able to give a speech about faith and service and God. Because by that time, and there was another fellow in my class who had the same kind of spiritual awakening during that same period of time. He ended up becoming a doctor. But the two of us during that senior year of high school, we were proclaiming the gospel everywhere. So I got a chance to proclaim it in my speech to my classmates on graduation day.
Praise God. Praise God. So what was your favorite subject?
Math. I remember being in the 7th grade. My math teacher called me aside one day and she said, Frank, you're bored in class, aren't you? And I said, yeah, not because I wasn't interested in the topic, but because I was so interested that I went ahead on my own pace. She actually arranged, this was when I was in the 7th grade, so she arranged for me to take my math classes at the high school. When I was in 7th and 8th grade, I'd be going up to the high school just for math. And then when I was in high school, they arranged for me to go to the local community college for my math courses. Math is what led me to God, led me to the priesthood. And so people say, well, what are you talking about? Because the deeper you go into math, the more abstract it becomes, and the concepts that you deal with are not that far from the concepts of philosophy and then theology. For example, the concept of infinity is not that far from the concept of eternity. The mathematical formulas that you start to learn, you start to ask, well, who invented this? Because they've been that way for as long as, human history records. So it's like, where did this come from? So you have to think about the intelligence behind the universe. In short, math and my love of math led me to a deeper faith.
What a blessing to be able to have teachers that saw that.
Oh, that was a tremendous thing. A tremendous thing, yes.
Yeah.
Very grateful to them.
So
I remember one time in the 9th grade, I was working on a trigonometry problem, and my teacher knew I was working on it, and I had these, you remember the graph paper?
Mm-hmm, yes.
Yeah, so I had this, it was this big. I had it laid out on the floor, like I say, in my living room at home. I was working after school one day on this trigonometry problem that filled up this entire page, and I finally solved it. I picked up that paper, I ran across, the high school was right across the street from the house where I grew up, and my teacher was still there, and I went to find her. I said, look, I solved the problem. I mean, it was a passion. It was a passion. And learning and study and reading and so forth are still very much a passion of mine.
Wonderful. And when did you develop the interest in and desire to public speak?
When I was about 9 years old, my mom got me and my brother for Christmas these little cassette tape recorders. And we started then. Hi, this is Frankie and Joey, and we're here. It's December the 5th, and it's cloudy today outside. It might rain in a little while, but we've got our friends over. We developed a hobby of recording all sorts of things. We would record the holidays. I have Christmas recordings. We would record friends coming over, vacations. And, I didn't realize it then, but what was happening was I was getting a lot of training in public speaking / radio, enunciating, being heard clearly, making sense in full sentences.
Yes.
Because we'd be making all these tapes, and what would we be doing? We'd be listening back to them. Mm-hmm. And I always recommend, by the way, to my brother priests and deacons, record your homilies. I recorded every one of my homilies when I was doing parish work. I've got them, most of them are on our website. And you record them and you listen back, because when you listen back, you'll be pleasantly surprised that it sounds better than you thought that it sounded, or certain things that maybe you thought sounded great didn't come out so good. But you learn a lot about how you come across, and therefore, basically, I trained myself. I was never afraid of public speaking. I always loved doing it.
When you entered the priesthood, did you ever imagine that you would be leading a worldwide ministry?
Not quite, but I had the heart for it, though, because in my room, in my seminary, I actually had a quote from a Protestant reformer on the wall, John Wesley. I had a map of the world on my wall in my bedroom at the seminary, and it said, "All the world is my parish." Now, of course, nobody can foresee the future. I didn't know. Like right now, what this conversation we're having now is going to a worldwide audience. This whole ministry, Priest for Life, is worldwide. I didn't know that would be the case, but that was my heart, that, the gospel of life, the gospel of salvation has been given to us for everyone in the world, every human creature, from Adam and Eve to the last person who will ever be created. And it's like, that's where I want to proclaim the gospel to everybody. So God nurtured that fire in my heart. It's sad, I've even had some church leaders say to me over the year, well, one of whom came to know about that, and that's a reflection of narcissism, it's selfishness. It's like, I'd like to ask that person what signs he had on his, if I had a wall filled with pictures of myself, that's narcissism. If you have a map of the world and it says all the world is my parish, that's a desire for service. That's a desire for service. So I praise the Lord that He's fanned the flame of that desire every single day since then.
Amen. Well, you mentioned being in the seminary. What did
Yes.
your fellow seminarians think of you?
Well, they knew I was. They had a high regard for my intelligence, and I always. I had a high regard for many of them who were very intelligent too. But they would often refer to me in in that way, like, oh, we go to Frank, to get the answer to these questions and so on. Let's see if he knows this. There was some of that. They knew that I liked public speaking. We even did some radio work as seminarians. And in fact, one of the people that many of our viewers might know, we don't have a working relationship with. Sometimes they'll ask me for quotes. Michael Voris with Church Militant. He was actually in the seminary. I went to St. Joseph's Seminary, Dunwoody in New York. He was actually a classmate of mine for 1 year in Dunwoody, and he and I and about 5 other seminarians, we actually worked on a radio show together. This was in the mid-'80s, and mid to late 80s. I was ordained in 88. And so my classmates, they would often look to me for advice about things like that. And they always thought of me as, I always built up a reputation as someone who really strongly loved and defended the magisterium of the church and the teaching of the bishops. I mean, we were all of that mindset. I mean, after all, we were seminarians. We were Catholic seminarians. Under Cardinal O'Connor, no less, so who of course was a great churchman. But I had a particular emphasis on that in my own spirituality and so forth. So anything that the bishops would write or publish, or anything about the magisterium of the church, they knew that I was among the most enthusiastic in spreading that and defending it.
Yes. Well, before you started leading Priest for Life, Father, you were a parish priest, and how did you like that?
Oh, I loved it. I loved the parish work. I was assigned to St. Charles on Staten Island, very large parish, 3,000 families. We had a school, 600 students right there on the property, and it was great. I had a great pastor. There was an associate, then it was a retired pastor. So it was the 4 of us. We had 3 deacons. I mean, that's a great pastoral team. I remember, some of my classmates, they would say, oh, we don't like doing weddings. We don't like doing weddings and funerals, and there's so many people that, they don't go to church any other time. But I loved it. I would stand on the line, the receiving line after the wedding, where people would come and greet the bride and groom and the parents and the best man and the maid of honor. I said, well, let them get a chance to greet the priest too. You know that's how many people would come through that line. They hadn't been to church in decades. They had never shaken the hand of a priest in their life.
Wow.
And I stood there and I said, welcome, you are welcome here. It is so nice to have you here. I always told also when I did wake services, I told the funeral director, I says, can you give me a room after the wake service to hear confessions?
Wow.
Because I would say to the people, tomorrow we're going to have the funeral for your loved one, and one of the best ways you can help them spiritually is to be able to receive communion and offer it for them. But, you may not have been to church in a while. Maybe it's time to go to confession. So what would happen is they would put me in a room, and then, it would be a little pause. I'd wait there patiently. Then one person would come and bravely see, what's this priest going to be like? And invariably, I'd hear their confession, they'd go back up, and then all of a sudden a whole bunch of people would come one after another. So I can just imagine I'm going up there and putting the thumbs up, saying, he's nice, he didn't give me such a big penance. But it was funny, because one of the rooms they often put me in was the room with all the caskets. It was easy to say to the people, you better repent, because, life is short.
Wow, well, that's awesome. I'm sure they really appreciated that.
They did.
So what did you do on your days off when you were a parish priest?
Well, people are going to laugh at this. Very often, I had one day off. It was usually Wednesdays. And it would usually start with the 6:45 a.m. Mass. I'd have to say Mass at the parish before I went on my day off. Sometimes there'd be a funeral at 9 o'clock. So that's a nice way to start a day off, the Mass, funeral. And then I'd get in my car. Usually I'd go up to Portchester. It was about 90 minutes away. My parents still live there, and I would go visit with my parents. But often enough, I would go first to teach a Bible course. The Diocese of Bridgeport, Connecticut, which borders on Portchester, had me teaching a Bible course there. And I'd spend time with my family and whatnot. And then at night, I would teach another Bible class before driving back to Staten Island. But this is the way I've always been. Obviously everybody needs time off. It's not that, it's not wise, it's not healthy never to take a break. But I find I don't need much of a break. You know, even now, I don't have a day off every week. I'll take one day once in a while where I'll completely disconnect, you know, leave my cell phone in my room and go. I love the seashore. I've always grown up near the water. I like amusement parks and whatnot. But one solid day of disconnecting for me is quite enough for a good long interval, you know. But we all need breaks, but some need more than others.
Yes, and I know from working with you that usually a day is enough for you. So, and I also understand from a previous interview that you invested your own money into Priest for Life when you took over the organization.
I did. Well, because there was no budget to speak of. I mean, the guys that started it out in San Francisco, they had $3,000 in the bank account when I took over full time in the fall of 1993. But they said, take this money and defend life. I had no staff, no office, no fundraising plan to speak of. We had a little newsletter that we sent out to, I don't know, a few thousand people. I built it up from scratch, and you know, so the question right away was, well, how do I do this? How do I travel? Because I started traveling to meet with different pro-life groups to, you know, get them aware of Priest for Life. How do you do anything? Well, you know, I was never a spender. I mean, I don't have any kind of expensive habits, and you know, any money I made as a parish priest, I saved it. I didn't spend it. When I got ordained, of course, you know, you get ordained, you get a nice, you know, bunch of gifts. I think you know, that added to my personal savings, of course, and of course the work that I did before going into the seminary. Like I say, I mean, you get your paycheck, and I never had much to spend it on. So when I started with Priest for Life, I said to myself, now I know. I mean, I had gotten that call of conscience. I said, now I know what I want to give my money to, my energy, my time, my life. And so that's exactly what I did. It wasn't even uppermost in my mind. Whenever there was a bill to be paid, I just wrote a check. I was like, I don't care. And I literally, as we started hiring a staff, building up the organization, I didn't take any salary. Because I said, well, I don't need one. I'm going to just go off of my savings. And actually I did that for a very long time. That I was basically volunteering as the director of Priests for Life up until just a few years ago, really. I just utilized every dime of my personal savings, and anytime anyone would give me money, like say for a birthday gift or you know, you go on a speaking engagement, sometimes they'll give you a little extra something. Here, this is for you personally. Just put it back into Priests for Life. So that's. And you know what? I would advise anybody that wants to get something started, don't draw any boundaries with that. You really believe in something, there's one way it's going to succeed. Give everything. That's it.
What else did you do to help Priest for Life to grow?
We went to the other leaders in the movement and we said, how can we help you? Now, it's not that we had anything to give them, but we said, how could we help you? And you develop those relationships and you develop those partnerships. And if you've got something to say and you make the connections with people who care about what you're saying, it's going to grow. You're going to get well known, and that's what started happening. People started inviting me for speaking and so forth. And, you know, like I said before, you know, not taking any salary, it was like, well, what do I need it for? I'm getting on a plane, you know, on Thursday morning to fly to, you know, I don't know, St. Louis. Pro-Life group is paying the ticket to fly me out there. They're covering my meals while I'm there, giving, you know, 3 or 4 talks a day, speaking all weekend in the parish, and then flying back. You know, and you do that. And you know, I got to the point where my travel schedule on the average brought me to 3 or 4 states a week. Wow. A week. So it was like I'm traveling 75-80% of the time, and but that's how it grows. How it grows is you make yourself present, and you're talking about things that matter. You have to have a relevant ministry.
Yes. Well, has the fact that some bishops opposed your work, has that affected the growth of Priests for Life?
It actually has not. There have been some bishops that have opposed our work. Some oppose it still. Some don't want me doing this work. And I ask them, well, tell me what part of the work you don't want me to do. Is it the Rachel's Vineyard, healing the wounds of moms and dads that have been affected by abortion? What part of that do you not want me to do? We're announcing a project today where we're urging pastors to put information in their parish bulletin, in their website, in their online broadcasting about alternatives to abortion. What part of that would they not want me to do? We train pregnancy center staff and directors. We help clergy preach about abortion. I have an entire book about that. Alveda King and Janet Morana and Silent No More and our youth outreach and our, it's like our prayer campaigns and so on. We do all this work. And there are some that, for reasons that they've never explained, because those reasons simply don't exist with any logical persuasion, some don't want me doing the work that I do. Now, if bishops in the church were identifying something wrong that I have done, then them speaking out against that would have an impact on me and on the growth of the ministry, if they were pointing out something I did that was wrong. But they never have. They never have. There have been some over the years that have kicked up dust and created confusion about, we want to know more, but as if there's some big, deep, dark secret, like I've got 5 yachts in New York Harbor or something. But they've never been. That's the whole point. They've never been specific. When are you going to tell people about that yacht that you have? And they've never been able to say anything specific. So no, the fact that some leaders in the church are not saying and doing what needs to be said and done to stop abortion is, in fact, precisely not something that hurts Priests for Life. It's something that helps us grow. Because, and I'm sure many of our viewers right now can testify to the fact that they support our work precisely because we're saying the things that they wish they heard in their church every Sunday, and we're doing the things that they wish the church leaders in their own church or diocese would do. That's been a key formula, going back to your other question about how we've grown. We've done the things that need to be done. Mm-hmm. We've opened our mouths when too many priests have their mouths closed. Now, a lot of priests want to open their mouths, and that's where we give them the strength to do it and the resources. Like some people say to me, well, why do you have to have Priests for Life? Isn't every Priest for Life? And I say, well, we just help them to say so. And that's what people want.
Exactly. So one of the things that people say about President Trump is that he's so healthy because he doesn't drink or smoke. Is that the same about you?
It actually is. Yeah, I've never drank or smoked at all in my life. Except on New Year's Eve, I like to take about 3 sips of champagne at midnight. But no, that's not to say anything. It's not necessarily virtuous in any way. It's just a fact. It's just a fact. But yeah, and that certainly does contribute to health, I'm sure.
Sure. I agree. Well, it seems that when reporters do stories about you, they always seem to use the adjective, controversial to describe you.
That controversial priest, yeah.
The
controversial head of Priests for Life. The controversial priest, yeah.
So how do you feel about that?
Well, I think it's redundant, actually. The Christian gospel is controversial. I'm a proclaimer of the gospel of Jesus Christ. I remember one time it was a pro-life event in a certain city that I was a speaker for, right? And this group that was organizing it, they were a strong protest group, right? And they were trying to find a church to host the event, the rally at which I was speaking. They couldn't find a church. The pastor, one after another, was saying, no, we would rather not, no. Finally, one of the pastors in the town stepped up to the plate, welcomed them in, and I can still remember to this day, I've given thousands and thousands of talks, but this one stands out in my mind. That pastor came up and greeted us all. I want to apologize, he said, for my fellow pastors in this town for not welcoming this group into this town because he said it was controversial. I got news for you, he said. The gospel of Jesus Christ is controversial. And everybody, erupted in applause. Look, of course I'm controversial. We're dealing with the gospel, and on top of that, I'm dealing with the abortion issue full time. So it would kind of be odd. I mean, in one sense, it's redundant. Okay, to say I'm an anti-abortion activist and I'm a priest of the Catholic faith proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's pretty controversial. That's a bunch of controversy all loaded into one person. But you know, a lot of people, they don't want to be confronted with these things. Some church leaders say, oh, Father Frank is too aggressive on abortion. Well, too bad. You know, when abortion stops being aggressive on these little babies that it rips to shreds, then you can come and talk to me. But, you know, right now, don't even talk to me because, yeah, controversial. So it's a badge of honor.
Well, one day when you were outside Priest for Life headquarters up in New York, where we used to be, a woman from your parish had walked by and greeted you, and she had a question for you. What were you talking
She did. She
about?
was a wonderful woman. She was in the church choir for many years when I was a parish priest, and of course lived there. Our first office was on Staten Island before we moved here to Florida. And she saw me out there. Oh, Father, how are you doing? We had a very pleasant conversation. And I remember she said to me, she sort of looked towards the building there that we were standing in front of, and she said, so after this, she said, well, what's next? As if, I mean, I don't know, maybe I had some ambition to, you know, become a who knows what in the church. I said, nothing. I said, what's after this is victory. Victory over abortion. My life right now is for one thing. My life, my work, my ministry, my leisure, my money, my time, my energy. Ending abortion. I don't have any other ambition in my life. I don't want any position. In fact, if I was asked to take one, I would refuse. I don't want any position. I don't want any other job. I want to end abortion. So, I mean, and I said it to her not in any kind of negative way. I said, oh, no, really. I said, this is what I need to finish this job for my whole life. We need to bring an end to abortion. And this woman was very strongly supportive of everything that we were doing. So she understood right away.
Yes, I'm sure. Wow. So what characteristics do you admire most in people?
Honesty. Not only do I admire it the most, it's what we need the most. You know, there's a sort of a little bit of a movement among people in the church now when it comes to politics, where they say, oh, well, the most important virtue in our politics, in our national discourse, is civility. And I disagree with that. That's not the number one urgent characteristic. It's honesty, truth-telling. What I value most in other people and in myself, honesty, sincerity, transparency. If we had a good mega dose of those three things, which really are interlocking virtues, boy, we would go a long way in solving the problems in the world and in the church. Honesty, transparency, sincerity. Say what you mean what you say, do what you promise, tell me what's on your mind, answer the questions. And if you make a decision, and those of us in any kind of authority really have to remember this, if you make a decision that's going to impact people's lives, you've really got to do two things besides make the decision. You've got to listen to those people first, get their input. And then once you make your decision, yes, if you're in a position of legitimate authority, you should expect the people over whom you have authority to follow your decision, but explain it to them. If a decision maker cannot give a rationale in honesty and sincerity for what they decided, then I think there may be a problem with that decision or how they came about it. And that's part of the transparency. How did you come to your decision? But honesty, sincerity, look, I don't have any ulterior motive here. I don't have any agenda. I'm not trying to manipulate you. I'm not trying to deceive you. I'll tell you like it is. That's what, when we get thousands and thousands of letters and tens of thousands of emails and whatnot in our ministry. And I would say the one thing that people thank me for the most for our ministry, and it's not just me, but the other people on our team, Alvita King and Janet Morana and our priests and our others on our team, they thank us above all for courageous truth-telling. That's what, courageous telling of the truth. People thirst for that. And it's not only that has to be done in the public arena, like we're fighting abortion, it's got to be done on the interpersonal relationship level. It's got to be done spouse to spouse and parents to children and children to parents and employers to their workers and vice versa. It's got to be done. This president we have is the most transparent president that we've ever had. Some people say, oh, I don't like his tweets. I love his tweets. You know one of the reasons why? It makes him the most transparent president. He's not hiding behind layers and layers and layers of bureaucracy. He's telling people what he thinks. And he wants them to tell him what they think. We need this. We need this. We need this. And it'll build bridges of dialogue. I have had fruitful relationships over the years with some of the leading abortion advocates in our history. They're still alive. Bill Baird, got 3 Supreme Court decisions to his name, pioneer of the pro-choice movement. People can go talk to him, go contact him, and they'll see that he and I have become friends over the years. We've had very, very meaningful conversations. And Ron Fitzsimmons became very well known in the mid-90s. He was the executive director of NCAP, the National Coalition of Abortion Providers. He and I established a friendship even to this day. And so, you know why and how that happens? Neither one of us compromising our positions. It happens because of this characteristic. You just asked me, what do I value most in people? Sincerity. Those men, as committed to their cause as I am to our cause, could sit down, look face to face at me, and without any other agenda, have an honest conversation. Truly listen and know that they were being listened to.
Yes.
This is missing in our society, and unfortunately, it is missing too often in the church. And we have to repent of that and get back to healthy, open communication, and we're going to solve a lot of problems.
Amen. Well, Father, thank you.
Oh, boy, it's been a nice conversation.
It has, and I thank you for your honesty and sincerity and transparency today.
That's all people are ever going to get from me.
Oh, praise God. And so, brothers and sisters, we hope you enjoyed this time together with us. And if you have more questions for Father Frank, comment on in the comments below and let us know, and maybe we can get him to do this again. So thank you, and have a blessed day.